the non-members are here too.
Excellent.
Good morning, everyone.
Bonjour.
A moment to untangle my my earpiece from my mask. Welcome, everyone. Welcome, Ms. May. Nice to see you with us. You were, of course, with us for C12 and contributed to the discussion in C12. So it's, I guess, in a sense, your return to our committee. Hello, welcome everyone. Welcome to the witnesses for today's hearing. I just want to go over a few rules of procedure, rules of protocol, really for the benefit more of the witnesses than anyone else, since we're all used to the rules of procedure here in the time of COVID. You know, for those who are in the room, please maintain 2-meter physical distancing. I'm not sure that's the case are you guys 2 meters apart? Yeah. Okay, good. Pardon me? Yeah. Yeah. That's anyway. Looks like 2 meters. I'll take your word for it. Please wear a non-medical mask when circulating in the room. It is highly recommended that the mask be worn at all times, including when seated. There's hand sanitizer if needed. As for the witnesses, you can speak, of course, in the official language of your choice. When you are not speaking, if you could put your mics on mute, that would help in terms of avoiding ambient noise and so on. And before speaking, of course, and this goes for the members of the committee as well as the witnesses, please wait for me to call you by name. Before we start, I would just like to ask for unanimous consent, if possible, for the steering committee report. Mr. Longfield.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to clarify that we're creating a placeholder for the Conservatives on the third report,
yes,
and that they'll submit something to the committee, and then committee process will take over from there once they've given something for us to consider as a study.
The customary way we do things, yes, it's a placeholder. As I understand it, there's no specific study that you have in mind at the moment, but there's a placeholder, so when we get to it, perhaps in a year's time, because we may be receiving legislation, yes, we'll be discussing ideas from Mr. Albas.
Great, thank you.
Chair.
Yes.
Just a quick question. When you say a year's time?
No, it's conjecture. It's not a ruling.
Okay, no. I just was wondering to see if you knew something you would want to share with the committee.
No, I don't actually. I don't know very much, Mr. Albas.
No,
but I mean, I'm assuming.
Because I don't know very much either, so I feel better.
Exactly. So I'm just saying maybe it'll be less than a year's time because, you know, whenever we do a study, we have to review the report, and that's usually 3 or 4 meetings, and then, you know, it's the summer break, and so hopefully we'll get to your study as soon as possible. I don't have a timeline. It's all conjecture, Mr. Albas. But, you know, we could receive legislation. It's always a possibility. We're a legislative committee. Okay, well, thank you for that, colleagues. And we have with us, we can now proceed to the nuclear study. It's our first study of the 44th Parliament, et je remercie Madame Posé d'avoir...
Sir, I would like to thank Madame Posé for suggesting this study that is very interesting on a topic that is increasingly relevant. Here today are 5 witnesses. Each witness will have 5 minutes to give their opening statements. We will then have rounds of questions. First round, second round, third round. We're not going to start over after an hour. We're going to continue all through the end of the meeting.
Mr. Gordon Edwards, President of the Canadian Coalition for Nuclear Responsibility. Welcome, Mr. Edwards. We have Mr. John Gorman, President and Chief Executive Officer of the Canadian Nuclear Association. Welcome, Mr. Gorman. From Concerned Citizens of Renfrew County and area, we have Ole Hendrickson, who's a researcher. I hope I pronounced your first name properly. And from Ontario Power Generation, we have Jason Van Wart, VP Nuclear Sustainability Services. And we have Ms. Lori Swamy, President and Chief Executive Officer of the Nuclear Waste Management Organization. So I guess we won't waste any time, and we'll start.
Monsieur le Président.
Madam Chair, Mr. Chair? Yes, I apologize. I had raised my hand. I just want to understand how the meeting will unfold. So there will be a first, second, and third round. So there's a first 6 minutes, and then with each round, Laurel and I only have 2.5 minutes each time? Yes, because we're not going to switch panels after an hour. I'm certain that your questions will be relevant, insightful, and that we will be able to obtain good answers. I'm not worried. Thank you. So let's begin. You have 5 minutes, Mr. Gordon Edwards.
Mr. Edwards, can you hear us? Oh, okay, we can't hear him. We'll just go straight to Mr. Gorman, and we'll come back to Mr. Edwards. Mr. Gorman, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the Environment Committee, for the opportunity to participate today. It's truly a privilege. Merci, Monsieur le
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, members of the committee.
Reconciliation. I'd like to acknowledge that while I'm coming to you virtually today, I am physically on the unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe people. I'm John Gorman, President and CEO of the Canadian Nuclear Association and former President and CEO of the Canadian Solar Industries Association. The Canadian Nuclear Association represents the entire spectrum of the nuclear industry, and that includes the mining sector, nuclear utilities, engineering, manufacturing, and supply chain companies. We account for 76,000 direct and indirect jobs, and it's a cornerstone of Canada's innovation system. One of the reasons why we're doing so much innovation in this very healthy nuclear ecosystem is because of the $26 billion refurbishment that is currently underway in Ontario of the Ontario Power Generation and Bruce Power units, proceeding on time and on budget, and allowing for this extraordinary innovation in the areas of small modular reactors, as well as in life-saving medical isotopes and nuclear medicine generally. As I'm sure all of you are aware, we're also the second largest exporter of uranium in the world, and Cameco is a key global player in our nuclear ecosystem. Before I speak to the nuclear waste and byproduct aspects of our industry, I'd like to provide a little bit of context on how the nuclear industry contributes to Canada's key goals and priorities. As you know, Canada, along with the rest of the world, has been dealing with COVID-19 pandemic. But we're also witnessing the long-term impacts of climate change, right? And 2021 has seen the acceleration of fires, floods, heat waves worldwide, and we've experienced it here at home. And all of this validating the UN IPCC's warning that this is a code red for humanity. And in fact, as this government and all of us have noted, this is a climate crisis that we're experiencing here and around the world. And as world leaders concluded at COP26, there is an urgent need for an all-out effort to address the climate crisis. And as part of that effort, all the tools at our disposal, all non-emitting and clean energy technologies, including nuclear, are needed to play a role in dramatically reducing emissions. And this view is reflected internationally as the governments of the United States, the United Kingdom, France, Finland, and others have indicated that nuclear technologies, both large and small, will need to be a part of the clean energy solution to address climate change. And we saw that earlier this week as well, with the EU Commission reinforcing this position when it issued its decision to include nuclear as a sustainable technology required for a net zero future. The emissions targets agreed to at COP26 will require a significant amount of new electricity, as we all know, 2 to 3 times the amount of electricity generation that we have here in Canada. And provinces such as Ontario, which were able to transition away from coal due to nuclear, will also need significant amounts of new non-emitting electricity as we fuel switch from fossil fuels. We also see this interest growing provincially in a pan-Canadian way, with other provinces recognizing they need small modular reactors. The premiers of Alberta, Saskatchewan, Ontario, New Brunswick have all identified new nuclear as needed for their to meet their low emission targets, and they've signed a memorandum of understanding on this. Now, some raise issues associated with nuclear waste, and I think this study provides an opportunity to give an overview about how robustly the nuclear industry and its products are regulated. The Canadian nuclear waste is the most highly regulated and managed waste possible from an energy waste perspective. You know, all energy sources, including renewables, generate waste. Nuclear is the only industry that can account for all of the waste, and of course, we don't emit any pollution. Nuclear waste is regulated by our regulator, the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission, and we're monitored by the International Atomic Energy Agency. Now, it's important to note that not all waste is high level, right? We tend to think of waste as spent fuel, but nuclear waste includes low, medium, and high level waste and byproducts, uranium mine and mill tailing waste forms. And so it's important to distinguish what we're talking about. Canada has led the way, creating and supporting the efforts by the Nuclear Waste Management Organization to identify a suitable site for a deep geological repository, a DGR, for a permanent solution, for a storage solution for our waste. DGRs are recognized worldwide, I'd like to add.
Yes.
France, Finland, Sweden have all taken similar paths.
Thank you, Mr. Gorman. We've passed 5 minutes, but there'll be many rounds of questions, so you'll be able to speak about those during the meeting. We'll go now to Mr. Hendrickson from the Concerned Citizens of Renfrew County and Area.
Well, thank you, Chair. Thanks to the committee for instituting this important study. I'll make 8 points. Number one, permanent disposal facilities for nuclear reactor waste have never been approved in Canada. Such facilities will impact many future generations, and we must get them right. Number two, prior to 2015, the Nuclear Legacy Liabilities Program was under the management of Natural Resources Canada. In fall 2015, the government transferred responsibility for oversight of public expenditures for decommissioning of its nuclear facilities and reduction of its nuclear waste liabilities from NRCan to Atomic Energy of Canada Limited. And AECL issued a 10-year multi-billion-dollar contract to a multinational consortium under a government-owned contractor-operated, or GOCO, model. The GOCO contract was based on similar arrangements in the UK and the US, but in April 2016, the UK's Nuclear Decommissioning Authority terminated its GOCO contract with the consortium operating the Sellafield nuclear site. And problems included escalating GOCO costs, increased liability amounts, large GOCO executive turnover, and questionable contractor expenses. Then in March 2017, the NDA announced that its GOCO contract with the Nuclear Cavendish Fluor Partnership would be terminated after 5 years instead of 14 years. And Texas-based Fluor was a partner in that partnership and is a partner in the Canadian Nuclear Energy Alliance, National Energy Alliance, which is AECL's GOCO contractor. So does AECL, which now has 40 staff, have sufficient capacity for oversight of the GOCO contract and associated subcontracts? This raises concerns about government accountability, fiscal responsibility, public oversight of Canada's nuclear waste liabilities, and our ability to meet international obligations related to nuclear waste and nuclear safety. Intervention by Parliament is recommended to restore public control and oversight of federal nuclear facilities and their radioactive waste, and to ensure public funds are spent wisely to contain and isolate these wastes. Third point, AECL's discounted $7.4 billion liability for federally owned nuclear sites, which is an asset retirement obligation in the public accounts of Canada, exceeds the $7.1 billion federal liability for over 2,500 contaminated sites. AECL's undiscounted liabilities are estimated at $16 billion. Now, Deloitte recommends discounting of asset retirement obligations only if the aggregate amount of the liability is fixed or reliably determinable, and the amount and timing of cash payments are fixed or reliably determinable. But future liability amounts and payments are uncertain. The 2021-22 main estimates include $808 million for AECL's nuclear decommissioning and radioactive waste management expenses. As of September 2021, AECL had $59 million in a trust fund reserved for disposal of federal high-level spent fuel and $47 million in a long-term disposal of waste fund to manage commercial wastes. Fourth point, commercial waste, some imported from foreign countries, are transferred from private to government ownership and stored at AECL's Chalk River laboratories. This has potential to increase the government's nuclear liability. Proposals to build small modular reactors on AECL properties could also increase the liability. Fifth point, Canadian Nuclear Laboratories, owned by the GOCO Consortium, is proposing 3 permanent radioactive waste disposal projects on AECL properties. The Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission is assessing these proposals under the former Canadian Environmental Assessment Act. An environmental assessment expert panel noted an apprehension of bias regarding CNSC's role as responsible authority for nuclear projects. The panel recommended CNSC not retain this role, and the new Impact Assessment Act reflects that for future projects, but proposals continue under the old regime. 6, the CNSC recently announced a licensing hearing for the Near Surface Disposal Facility, or NSDF, which involves permanent disposal of 1 million tons of federal and commercial radioactive waste in a landfill type facility at Chalk River. And
okay, thank you, Mr. Hendrickson. I'll have to stop you there, but as I said before, in relation to Mr. Gorman, there'll be plenty of time to delve into these issues. So thank you for your opening words. They were very interesting. We'll go to Ontario Power Generation with Mr. Van Voort, VP Nuclear Sustainability Services. Mr. Van Voort, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee, for inviting OPG here today. I'm the Vice President of Ontario Power Generation's Nuclear Sustainability Services Division. Nuclear Sustainability Services handles all of the byproducts of nuclear power generation from OPG-owned nuclear stations in Ontario. This includes Pickering, Darlington, and the Bruce Power Plant. First, I'd like to take a little bit of time to talk about our company and what we do for Ontario and Canada. OPG is Ontario's largest clean energy producer. We generate 50% of the electricity consumed in Ontario, and 60% of that total energy in Ontario comes from nuclear power. Thanks to the reliability of nuclear energy, Ontario was able to stop burning coal in 2014. As a result of this transition from coal to nuclear, Ontario now has the cleanest electricity grid in North America. OPG's climate change plan, which we released in 2020, commits the company to be in net zero by 2040 and will help the Canadian economy reach net zero by 2050. Last year, OPG released our first ever reconciliation action plan to support reconciliation with Indigenous peoples. It makes a series of specific commitments, including achieving $1 billion in economic benefits for Indigenous peoples over the next 10 years. On the urgent issue of climate change, as has been stated by Natural Resources Canada, no credible path exists to net zero by 2050 without nuclear. As we move off fossil fuels, Canada needs a lot more electricity to meet future demand. In a scenario of high electrification, including in the transportation sector, Ontario electricity demand may increase by 40% by 2040. Globally, the International Energy Agency has forecast a near doubling of electricity demand by 2050. In this context, we must remember that nuclear is the lowest carbon form of energy measured by its entire life cycle, as reported by the United Nations Economic Commission for Europe. Renewables such as wind and solar cannot do the job alone. They're part of the clean energy mix, but they only work when the wind blows and the sun shines. We need reliable baseload electricity. We need nuclear energy. It helps keep our hospitals, businesses, and homes running 24/7. As for nuclear byproducts or waste, it is all tracked, all safely stored, which no other form of energy can claim. Byproducts of fossil fuels go into the environment as air pollution, releasing CO2 emissions and contributing to global warming. Solar panels go to landfills and they contain toxins such as cadmium, chromium, and lead. Also, it's important that I note that some of the byproducts of nuclear energy are in fact extremely valuable assets to Canada. For example, medical isotopes produced at nuclear power plants are helping to save millions of lives every year. These include cobalt-60, which have been produced at the Pickering Nuclear Station for over 50 years, and molybdenum-99, which will be soon produced at the Darlington Nuclear Station. These isotopes are used in sterilizing medical equipment, diagnosing disease, and treating cancer. I think all of us know someone whose life has been touched by these medical isotopes. Even byproducts once thought of as nuclear waste are proving to be strategic assets for Canada. For example, tritium, which is produced in a nuclear reactor as a byproduct of generating electricity, is used in emergency lighting, as a biomedical tracer, and in international research on fusion power. Tritium, in turn, is a source of helium-3, which is an extremely rare isotope. It doesn't occur on Earth. It's used in quantum computing, border security, neutron research, and medical imaging. Our nuclear governance in Canada is strong, with the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission regulating the industry under the Nuclear Safety and Control Act. Canada's regulatory regime is aligned with international best practices guided by the International Atomic Energy Agency. All nuclear waste is well regulated in Canada by the CNSC and managed safely by owners, with an excellent safety record at OPG and across Canada. In my division, good stewardship of the waste is our mission. We embrace the 3 R's: reuse, reduce, and recycle to minimize the volumes that we store. We're continually researching, investing, innovating, and applying new technologies to reduce the volumes. All of the waste is currently in interim storage. And while this is safe in the short and medium term, it's not a plan for the long term. Interim storage cannot be maintained in perpetuity for thousands of years. Buildings and packages degrade over time and need to be continually maintained. What is needed is permanent disposal. It's the right thing to do for our future. On the subject of permanent disposal, OPG supports the NWMO's process to see a deep repository for permanent use fuel, and we'd like to see it in service by 2043. We thank the Government of Canada for its foresight in creating the Nuclear Waste Act of 2002, which set the stage for the NWMO to develop a solution for all of Canada. Canada is on the same path as Sweden and Finland, which have already approved construction of DGRs for their use fuel. For the disposal of lower levels of waste, OPG notes that NRCan this week released its draft of the modernized policy framework, following a period of public engagement that began in 2020. We participated in that public process and will be providing comments on the new draft.
Great. Thank you so much, Mr. Van Voort, okay. and we'll come back to you during the round of questions. We have Ms. Swamy from the Nuclear Waste Management Organization for 5 minutes, please.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Vice Chairs, and members of the committee. My name is Lori Swamy, and I am the President and CEO of the Nuclear Waste Management Organization, or the NWMO. It's an honor to appear before you today to discuss the work of the NWMO. And I would like to begin by acknowledging the study we are participating in today is being conducted on the traditional and unceded territory of the Algonquin people. Today, I'm here to talk about the NWMO and our mandate to implement Canada's plan for the long-term management of used nuclear fuel in a manner that protects both people and the environment. The need for a permanent solution for Canada's used nuclear fuel has been studied and discussed for more than 50 years. The overwhelming result of this work and work done over the same period internationally was that over the long term, used nuclear fuel should be managed in a deep geologic repository and in a location that is socially acceptable. Further, to be successful, there must be political fortitude to move waste projects forward. We have seen this fortitude in Canada as government direction has steered policy forward, starting with the creation of the NWMO by federal legislation in 2002 and the selection of Canada's plan in 2007. We are an independent, not-for-profit organization and are fully funded by Canada's nuclear electricity producers. By funding us, the waste producers demonstrate responsibility for implementing a long-term disposal plan. The federal government has oversight over our work. We submit annual reports, which are tabled in Parliament by the Minister of Natural Resources. We are also accountable to Canadians. Starting at the very outset, we engaged Canadians from coast to coast to coast, including First Nation, Métis, and Inuit. Based on the values and priorities that Canadians and Indigenous people said were important, we proposed a plan for managing used nuclear fuel in a purpose-built deep geologic repository using both engineering systems and the rock itself to protect both people and the environment. We also heard that we must locate our repository in an area with informed and willing hosts. I cannot emphasize enough that Canadians have made it clear that we must take responsible action now rather than leaving waste for the next generation. While utilities take accountability and continue to safely manage used nuclear fuel on site at reactor facilities, the current approach is temporary and not suitable for the long term. As we have implemented our plan, we have heard repeatedly that purpose-built deep geological repositories represent the best way to protect people, the environment, and our precious water resources over the very long term. Canada can be proud to be among the leading countries advancing repository projects and doing our part to set a safe, science-based global standard. I would like to provide a few recent examples of the international consensus and support for deep geological repositories. Last year, the OECD's Nuclear Energy Agency issued a report on the management and disposal of high-level radioactive waste, which confirmed that geological repositories are the best approach. This year, the International Energy Agency's review of Canada's energy policy recommended that the Canadian government support NWMO's mandate in selecting a site for a deep geologic repository. And finally, last week, Sweden announced its approval of a deep geologic repository for its spent fuel, just a few weeks after Finland applied for an operating license for its repository. Today, we are well into a voluntary site selection process and are on track to identify a safe site for our country's repository with informed and willing hosts by the end of 2023. I am proud of the work this country has and continues to do to ensure radioactive waste management remains a strength of the nuclear sector, keeping people and the environment safe now and for the future. As I conclude my remarks, I wanted to leave the committee with the following quote from the Swedish Minister of Climate and the Environment regarding the approval of the Swedish repository. The technology and the capacity are available. It is irresponsible to leave nuclear waste in water tanks year after year without taking a decision. We must not pass on this responsibility to our children and grandchildren. Our generation must take responsibility for our waste. Thank you. Miigwech.
Thank you, Ms. Swamy. I believe we're having technical problems with Mr. Edwards' equipment, and they're not resolved yet, as far as I know. So we'll proceed to the first round of questions. If for some reason and hopefully Mr. Edwards' equipment starts working, we'll hear from him after the first round. If that's not the case, we'll invite him back for the next meeting. Madame Posey, vous avez un point d'ordre?
You have a point of order, Mrs. Posey. Yes, Mr. Chair. What I don't understand, it seems that checks need to be done before the meeting comes. Yes, we did not do a check for Mr. Edwards ahead of time. And that's why his equipment's not working. But we're not forgetting him. He can come back. If we can't resolve the matter by the end of the first turn, we will invite him to appear at the next meeting. And obviously, we'll be working with him to ensure that his equipment works properly. If ever we don't have time, we'll have to add another meeting. This is because of the technical problems. I hope we're going to have time. We can discuss this later at the steering committee. Thank you. So we'll begin with Mr. Albus for 6 minutes.
Mr. Chair, let me first by thanking Madame Posey for proposing this study. This gives us a chance to talk about issues important not only to her voters, but right across the country. So I appreciate the attendance of everyone here today, and I hope that Mr. Edwards can be accommodated somehow, whether it be a written statement or at a follow-up meeting. But, Mr. Chair, I'd like to start by asking questions of Mr. Gorman from the Canadian Nuclear Association. Thank you for being here today, sir. You've kind of stated unambiguously that nuclear energy is necessary on the road to achieving net zero. So I assume that means, you know, the rehabilitation of our existing CANDU reactors and other facilities here in Canada. I think that's supporting the development of small modular reactors here in Canada. And I believe that the commercialization of that technology to sell around the world so we can lower not only greenhouse gas emissions here at home to power the electric vehicles that we know consumers are looking for, but also to ensure our energy security and to tackle both domestic and international greenhouse gas emissions. So, sir, could you tell me, to start with, what things is the government doing right when it comes to nuclear? What things do we need to do to take our own policies domestically and our own technologies commercially to really tackle the issue of climate change?
Thank you. Thank you very much for the question, Mr. Albus. And well, let me say, first of all, that Canada is doing everything right when it comes to the generation and safe management and operation of nuclear. We're a tier one, globally respected nation in terms of our assets, our facilities, and our regulator. We have over 50 years of providing almost 16% of Canada's electricity, non-emitting electricity in an enviable fashion. I would also say that the international community is watching us very closely because we're doing other things right. We're taking our existing assets and we're refurbishing them on time and on budget. And we're using the very healthy ecosystem that we've created here on this large infrastructure project to be a world leader in the development of small modular reactors and also in nuclear medicine. So in terms of what we need to do going forward and what we can't get wrong, comes back to this decision around what we do with our spent fuel and other forms of nuclear byproducts and waste. And as my colleague Lori Swamy said so eloquently in the quote that she was using to wrap up her remarks, I think the onus is on our generation to ensure that that we take that spent fuel and find a permanent solution for it. It's clear that nuclear is providing a very important solution now in Canada and has for 50 years. It will in the future as we head towards a net zero future and new nuclear is required. And so the onus is on us to ensure that spent fuel has got a permanent storage solution.
So have you seen that government support and funding for the development of new technologies such as small modular reactors? If you could maybe just tell us a little bit about that right now, because obviously small modular reactors are a different technology altogether than from what we're traditionally view as nuclear.
Yes, thank you. Small modular reactors are particularly relevant to Canada's challenge around decarbonizing our economy. Mr. Albus, it's true that we have a challenge ahead of us in terms of doubling or tripling the amount of electricity generation that we need in this country, so we can fuel switch away from fossil fuels and support electric vehicles, et cetera. But Canada's challenge has a lot to do with how we are going to decarbonize our heavy industry, the way we create cement and steel, fertilizer, our mining operations, the way we extract and process oil and gas. Small modular reactors are very scalable, high temperature, clean heat machines, and they can be scaled and used in those settings to to use the high temperature heat to create electricity, heat, and produce hydrogen all at the same time, help us decarbonize our heavy industry. And so the support that the federal government has been giving toward new small modular reactors is being used to make Canada a leader on this front. And I think the coordinated plan that we have to continue on that pathway is going to serve Canada well and help nations around the world with new nuclear to decarbonize.
We know that the current Minister of the Environment has been no fan of your industry, and really I'd like to talk about the future because I believe it's quite bright. Have you seen funding from government to support new technologies like SMRs that are fundamental towards meeting our own domestic targets as well as helping the world to reduce its greenhouse gases?
We have begun to see some support from the federal government, in particular through the SIF fund, Sustainable Innovation Fund. Some monies that have gone towards technologies that are being developed in New Brunswick, as well as other technologies here in Canada. Let me say that it is just the start of what is needed for Canada to fully capitalize on the innovation and the first-of-a-kind costs that are required to roll out these small modular reactors into these industries that need to be decarbonized. We have a very fulsome plan as an industry, utilities that are working together, a regulator that is well equipped to be able to take a hard look at these technologies.
We're out of time, but we can come back.
4 provinces that have signaled their desire for these as well.
We can come back to the issue. Mr. Weiler, for 6 minutes, please.
Monsieur
Oh, I'm sorry, Madame Posey.
Ms. Posey. Ms. Posey.
Madame Posey.
Madame Posey, yes. I have a point of order. I find that right now, since Mr. Gorman, we're promoting small modular reactors, but Natural Resources Committee did a study. That's not really a point of order. I understand, Madame Posey. I understand. It's unavoidable that we do talk about nuclear energy and its future, but your point has been noted. Mr. Weiler? He was speaking to us at an early time from the West Coast. The floor is now yours.
I also want to thank all the witnesses for joining our committee meeting today. My first question is also to Mr. Gorman. I'm very intrigued with your career path and moving from the business side of one non-emitting form of electricity and solar to another in nuclear, and it puts you in a unique position to answer my first question. As you know, much of Canada benefits from access to cheap, non-emitting baseload electricity in the form of hydro that's been built over the course of many decades, but you've identified some provinces that don't. My question is, how do you see the full life cycle costs of nuclear in provinces like Alberta and Saskatchewan comparing to solar energy, where we also have a lot of unrealized potential when combined with electricity storage?
Through you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Wheeler. So this is a question fundamentally about cost, and I'm glad, Mr. Wheeler, you've pulled something to the forefront which is often overlooked when we talk about cost. You know, nuclear is a non-emitting electricity source with the lowest, full life carbon cycle footprint, and it produces electricity 24/7, 365 days a year. And with small modular reactors, of course, this promises the ability to make this source of electricity and heat, clean heat, very scalable. So when we look at the cost of intermittent or weather-based technologies like solar, as you mentioned, and wind, we have to acknowledge that the cost of making solar and wind a reliable source of electricity requires storage or some other form of partnership. And so that being said, nuclear has a very good track record of being a low-cost electricity provider in Canada. In Ontario, as a matter of fact, it is lower cost than wind, solar, and gas. The prospect of small modular reactors is that the small modular reactors are very responsive and scalable and can support more solar and wind. It is true that the cost has to be proven out. These are first of a kind deployments, but our studies show that they are going to be competitive when you look at it from an entire cost perspective with solar and wind.
Thank you, Mr. Gorman. Next question I have is for Ms. Swamy. When we're talking about nuclear, we also have to, of course, and the topic of the study is considering the waste. And so my question to you is how do the financial securities required from nuclear waste producers and owners compared to the likely cost of storing the waste for millennia in a way that will prevent the damage to human health and the environment for that time period? And what type of bonding is required upfront to ensure that this cost isn't borne by the public?
Thank you very much for that question. So the cost, and you started this with Mr. Gorman around the cost of electricity generation with nuclear. And I think one thing that's fundamentally important for the nuclear sector is that the generation of electricity is from nuclear is full life cycle. So it includes the disposal cost as well as the generating cost, as well as the construction cost. So it's all in. And what's important about that is that the funds are set aside now to implement disposal projects for the waste that exists. So as we sit today, there are funds that are held by each of the electricity producers that will cover the full costs of disposal projects. So for my project in particular, we are funded by the electricity sector to cover the costs of siting, moving through the regulatory process, and there are funds set aside now for the construction and operation of the facility for the 150 years that we will require that. And that money was set aside a number of years ago. And as generation of electricity proceeds, new used fuel bundles are created in Canada, the money is again set aside so that as future bundles are created, the money is always there. And so these are funds, they're trust funds that are set aside and are specifically paid into, but can only be accessed once the APM or the project, the Deep Geologic Repository for Used Fuel, moves into the construction phase. And so once we have a construction license, NWMO will be able to access that fund and use it for deployment of our project.
And after the 150-year mark, how are the securities accounted for after that?
So with respect to our project, so we will be in operation for a number of years, and for about 30 years after operation, we will be in a monitoring phase to understand what is happening with our project. We'll monitor and understand the environmental impacts, and eventually we will close our project, and that will remain a known fact around the site, and we will be able to manage that going forward.
You have time for a quick comment, Mr. Weiler.
Okay, and how do we ensure that
a comment as opposed to a question?
Okay, well, just thank the witnesses again.
Okay, thanks very much. Madame Posey.
Ms. Posey, you have 6 minutes. Initially, Mr. Chair, I find that the motion has not been respected, and I would ask that the committee members restrict themselves to asking questions about nuclear waste. We noted that the Minister of Natural Resources has minimized the need for having a good system. Can you comment on the situation, particularly in the light of the regulation of the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission of 2020 that recategorizes the radioactive intensity of waste? Isn't that the reason why that Canada is bragging about that there's less activity on Canadian territory?
Yes, thank you, Madame Posey. That's an important question. We need to be talking about nuclear waste, not nuclear energy. High-level spent fuel waste is really only the tip of the iceberg. Federal nuclear research and development has generated a $16 billion waste and decommissioning liability. The Auditor General is anticipating publication of an environment and sustainable development audit of nuclear waste management this year. Parliament should consider its findings before any permanent nuclear waste disposal facilities are approved. And I mentioned earlier the project to dispose of 1 million tons of commercial and federal waste at Chalk River. That project has been widely criticized as not meeting international safety standards, but the CNSC has recommended approval. So I ask that the committee consider the merits of creating an independent, publicly owned nuclear waste management and decommissioning agency, which is independent of the industry and government agencies that promote the industry, and that could draw upon governance models in other countries that have more advanced nuclear waste management
Monsieur
programs.
Hendrickson.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I have a lot of questions to ask you, and I have very little time to do so. We know that the City of Ottawa asked to proceed to the regional evaluation for all projects, be they past, present, or future projects of elimination of waste in the Ottawa Valley. So what do you think of the preoccupations identified by the City of Ottawa?
Very important objection to bringing nuclear waste into Chalk River. That is in the resolution, and we have no place at Chalk River. It's not a suitable place for long-term storage or disposal of waste. So we need a broader look at where nuclear waste could go, and I'm pleased with that resolution.
Madame Posé, si vous pourriez...
Ms. Posé, if you could mute yourself, please.
Yes, I was finishing up saying that it was an important request to the Minister of Environment to have a regional study. There are other nuclear waste facilities in the Ottawa Valley, but unfortunately that regional assessment did not go forward.
Madame Posé.
Ms. Posé, I would like to go back on the recategorization of waste. People are worried. We understand why. There's an increase of radioactive waste in Chalk River. Is there a link between the new regulation and the old regulation? With the recategorization, are we bringing even more waste to Chalk River?
Canada currently lacks a national radioactive waste inventory with consistent classification standards that has data on individual radionuclides. And we are not fulfilling our reporting obligations under the Joint Convention on the Safety of Nuclear Fuel Waste Disposal and Radioactive Waste Disposal. We just don't have a good enough inventory to make long-term plans for radioactive waste disposal. We need an independent agency that can develop such a proper inventory. And we don't want to see this reclassification of intermediate level waste as low level waste, which is unfortunately what's been happening at Chalk River.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hendrickson. And so in light of what the witness has just said, and I would like to thank him for his presence, I have a question for Mr. Gorman now. I understand that you're here to lobby to promote small modular reactors. What does your association do to fight radioactive pollution and to minimize radioactive waste that is increasing in Canada?
Thank you very much for the question, and through you, Mr. Chair, to Madame Posé. Madame Posé, just a quick clarification. I'm not here to lobby. I've been asked to appear before this committee to offer information on the nuclear on the nuclear industry. You know, I would, when it comes to the issue of, you know, what we're doing to minimize waste, I would like to pass that question over to my co-panelist, Jason Van Wart, because he's an expert in that area.
Address it later because we're out of time. And Madame Posey can come back to it, and Mr. Van Wart can address it when he answers the questions. Ms. Collins for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My first question is to Mr. Hendrickson. Last year, when the government was approving new rules for the disposal of nuclear waste in Canada, you wrote a little bit about those new rules. Can you tell our committee a bit more about the radioactive waste disposal rules in Canada, how strong they are, whether they're designed to protect the environment, human health, and future generations?
Yes, thank you, Ms. Collins. The new rules were developed by the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission. They are what the commission calls regulatory documents. They're not formal regulations. They are, in my view, watered down versions of the IAEA safety standards that do not necessarily have legal effect unless they're incorporated into licenses. And one of my concerns was the rule for, or the new regulatory document for decommissioning, which still could be interpreted as allowing disposal of small modular reactors in place without dismantling them and moving them to a repository such as the one that Ms. Swamy is talking about. So the process of developing those regulatory documents was not fully transparent in my view. There were probably meetings with the industry, and when you looked at how those were modified from the original drafts, you can see that virtually all the industry comments were incorporated, and fairly extensive comments from public interveners were not. Thank you.
Thanks so much. I want to follow up on a couple of questions from my colleagues, Mr. Weiler and Madame Posey. And you talked about liabilities in your opening statement. As Mr. Weiler already highlighted, nuclear waste producers are supposed to be responsible for this radioactive waste. It's a polluter pays principle. And we talked a little bit about 1 million years being the life cycle. I heard from Ms. Swamy that there was 150 years for the trust. Can you talk a bit about how these kind of future costs beyond that 150 years are factored into the decisions about nuclear projects?
If I may use the example again of this proposed near surface disposal facility at Chalk River. The proposal is for a 300-year institutional control period. In other words, there would have to be some kind of license and regulatory oversight for 300 years. But unfortunately, the packages that would go into that facility could have lifetimes, half-lives of hazardous lifetimes of thousands to hundreds of thousands of years. The result is that it would essentially never be possible to abandon or unlicense a facility that's above ground that still has significant quantities of radioactive and non-radioactive hazards in it. So you would essentially need a permanent, a perpetual license. So this would represent a perpetual liability for the people of Canada and for our governments and taxpayers.
Thanks so much. And you mentioned kind of the connection to small modular reactors and their life cycle. Yeah, can you talk a little bit about liabilities and how they might be the same or different for these new small modular reactors?
These reactors are mostly designs on paper. Some have earlier experiments in other countries have revealed some pretty significant problems with many of these designs. There have been attempts to make molten salt reactors and high temperature gas cooled reactors. I'm not the expert on this, but because of the experimental nature, it's very difficult to assign a proper liability amount for potential accidents for those reactors. Thank you.
Thank you. And my next question was going to be for Mr. Edwards, but maybe Mr. Hendrickson, I'll see if you've got can take a stab at it. It's really around and connects to something you mentioned about public-owned regulators and independent agencies. The International Atomic Energy Agency publishes safety standards, to make sure that nuclear is safe, that it's protecting people and the environment. They outline the need for regulatory bodies to be credible, so not to have conflicts of interest, to be independent from the organizations they regulate. Now, in Canada, we're currently regulated by Natural Resources, who are also overseeing the production of nuclear energy. Would it make more sense for the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission to report to the Minister of Environment, just to mitigate some of these potential risks of conflict of interest?
30 seconds, Mr. Hendrickson.
Yes, there is a definite conflict of interest in having the Minister of Natural Resources responsible for promoting nuclear energy under the Nuclear Energy Act, but also having the Atomic Energy of Canada Limited and Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission, the regulator, report to a minister that is promoting nuclear energy. That's a problem. It should be the Minister of Environment. Thanks.
We're out of time. Alors, on passe maintenant au deux.
We will now go to the second round, and we will start with Mr. Drishin. You have 5 minutes.
Chair, and thanks to all of the witnesses. First of all, as a proud Canadian, I champion all energy sources that we have, whether it be hydro or solar, wind, natural gas, and especially coming from Alberta, we have a great renewable industry there that has everything other than a lot of hydro. So certainly championing those things, I think, is important. And of course, my one concern that I have, and I'm sure we'll talk about in future discussions, the requirements for mining so that we can also actually develop energy storage systems so that they're going to be able to work with all of these new technologies. But Mr. Gorman, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about SMRs, as they've increasingly been seen as a solution to help us achieve net zero. And but as has been coming in some of the discussions we've had here, how about the need for research on this technology for minimizing waste? We know that the Moltex stable salt reactor, there's research being done there, the waste burning SSRW. We also have Purex that is on the processing of used nuclear fuel. I'm wondering if you can give us an idea how we can discuss that as we talk about nuclear fuel waste and its management.
Through you, Mr. Chair, thank you for the question, Mr. Drishin. Again, I'm not going to comment on the technical matters behind how we're minimizing waste, and we'll leave that to Mr. Van Woerden and Ms. Swamy. But I will say that you're right to comment on the application of small modular reactors and their importance to regions like Alberta. As Alberta phases out away from coal and from natural gas, and as you noted, does not have easy access to water power, small modular reactors are going to be able to play a very important role in decarbonizing both the electricity grid, but also potentially in the application of its high temperature heat to create steam for use in SAGD and the extraction and processing of oil and gas, so that we create a low carbon competitive products in this more carbon constrained future.
Well, thank you. And perhaps Mr. Van Voort, if you could kind of fill in some of those places as far as the reusing of nuclear fuel.
Was the question directed to me? Sorry, I'm having
Yes.
a bit of connectivity issues.
Oh, sorry about that. Yeah, I was just wondering if you could kind of fill in a little bit. I know that Mr. Gorman hadn't gone into the technical part of it as much, and he had sort of thrown the ball over to you, and I'm just wondering if you could add something to that.
Sure. Well, we're certainly at OPG interested in the opportunity to recycle used fuel. We've partly funded operations at Moltex, the venture in New Brunswick, but we see it as something that needs development. It's down the road and certainly doesn't negate the need for permanent disposal. One of the areas that we are very active in at OPG is in waste minimization of our lower level waste. So we've currently got a number of initiatives ongoing. We're funding a specific project with McMaster University that's investigating techniques and opportunities to reduce the volumes by recycling, reusing, and ultimately compacting the amount of waste that we have so we can reduce our environmental footprint, reduce the number of storage buildings we need. So those are our thoughts. Certainly recycling fuel is a very interesting area, but requires research and development and won't negate our need for permanent disposal.
The reason I ask is because a number of years ago I had an opportunity to speak with some physicists from Atomic Canada, and they had indicated that one of the easiest ways of handling this problem is to be able to reuse it and to take it down so that we don't have to worry about as much about the half-life aspect of it. I think if we could go back to the concept of the small modular reactors so that people understand the footprint that they
we have 10 seconds, Mr. Dushan.
I will leave it at that. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks. Mr. Duguid.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks to all of our witnesses today, and I hope we will get Mr. Edwards back.
We will, I assure you.
That's great. I was a student in the 1980s at Carleton, and I remember going to some of his lectures and sessions he held. But my first question, and I may have time for one more, is around the expansion of nuclear energy, which, of course, if it is expanded, would result in more nuclear waste. And just to put this on the record, Mr. Chair, I'm open to all technologies that will help us meet our, very ambitious emission reduction targets. I will point out on the topic of small modular reactors, not going to help us with our 2030 targets, and hopefully there's promise to assist us with our 2050 targets. But I'm particularly interested in the application of SMRs in our remote communities. The west side of Hudson Bay is very connected to Manitoba, and we're looking at extending our power lines to Rankin Inlet, to Arviat, and other communities, and it is in the billions. And with disruptions to wildlife and various environmental impacts. So I wonder if it's probably Mr. Van Wart that can speak to this. And what are the waste storage issues that we might encounter in sensitive remote environments like this? And I wonder if they could also talk about the issue of subsidization. We're going to be looking at oil and gas subsidies in our next study. Thanks, Ms. Collins, for that. And, shouldn't technologies be able to stand on their own 2 feet without subsidization? And maybe I'll ask Mr. Van Wart or any of our other speakers to comment.
I'm happy to speak about the waste handling and storage, but the subsidization is beyond my area of expertise. In terms of waste storage and handling, as has been noted in the discussion, most SMR designs are just entering into their detailed design phase. So at OPG, I can speak specifically. We're working with GE Hitachi. That's out in the public space. And so we were working directly with GE Hitachi as they work on their detailed design to understand the waste streams, the kind of waste that would be produced at the SMR. And then as we've done with all of our waste produced from our CANDU reactors, develop safe containers, safe transportation methods, safe interim storage. And then we would look, obviously, to optimize those streams of waste as time goes on and we understand exactly what would be coming out of the design. So it's a little bit preliminary to try to forecast exactly how you would transport and have interim storage, but we're actively working with our SMR developer at OPG.
I think Mr. Gorman wants to make a
Mr. Gorman,
comment.
do you have your hand up?
I do. Thank you. I just wanted to offer to respond to the second part of Mr. Duguid's question, if I may, about subsidies.
If we have time, sure.
Yeah, and the question of whether technologies should
Well, I'll leave it to Mr. Duguid as to who.
Yes.
No, that's fine.
Okay.
I'm anxious to hear about the
Go ahead, Mr.
the
Gorman.
issue of subsidy.
Thank you, Mr. Duguid. So the nuclear industry is not looking for subsidies as it comes to the development and deployment of the first of a kind small modular reactors. We have an integrated ask that is matched in funding and resources by four utilities across Canada, a truly pan-Canadian integrated ask that is requesting that the federal government contribute financing to the first of a kind related costs for 3 different streams of small modular reactors. So it's not subsidies. But what I would say is that at this time, the government does provide tax credit and preferable amortization treatment to green technology manufacturers and owners. And the nuclear industry should benefit from those tax credits as well, including any investment tax credit that might be extended to other forms of green technology. So I think it's important this committee consider that as we go forward and deploy more green technologies of all sorts, that small modular reactors be part of this.
Thank you. Madame Posey.
Thank you very much. First of all, I will ask the clerk to do a follow-up. Mr. Gorman, you're making a lot of allegations concerning the cost of hydro versus the nuclear energy. So I'm from Quebec. So when you're promoting nuclear energy, you don't take into account the costs related to waste generated by SMRs. And you're also making allegations concerning the abandonment of gas in the West. So could you send the committee documentation supporting what you said? My question will be for Mr. Swamy. I don't doubt about your goodwill. Your mandate is to ensure the good management of waste. But your bosses, the owners are organizations that manage you, and they are the polluters. So how can you ensure your mission fully when the polluters are those dictating solutions to the pollution that they generate? So usually we do not trust the wolf to manage the sheep. So how can you ensure your mission fully when your owners are the polluters?
Swamy.
Thank you very much for that question. And while we are funded by the nuclear energy companies and the owners of the waste, we have an obligation to meet the requirements of the Nuclear Fuel Waste Act. We also are required to report out to government on the progress of our work. Our work in the early days was proposed to the federal minister who approved the plan, and we are moving forward with that. All of our work is based on our communication and engagement with Canadians to understand the values that are important to Canadians, and that is how we developed our plan. We've gone back many times to confirm.
Je vais vous demander, Madame Swamy.
Mrs. Swamy, sorry to interrupt you, but I have little time. Right now, there is a consultation that is done by NWMO, only dealing with a small part of waste. And the policy at the federal level is under review. So in my book, when things are done in the right order, we develop a strategy after the establishment of the policy. So why did NWMO accept the implementation of a mandate for a strategy at this time? Does it have anything to hide? Mrs. Swamy, you will have to keep your answer for later because now we've gone beyond the 2.5 minutes. So maybe you would like to give your answer following another member's question. So, Mrs. Collins.
Ms. Swamy, if you would like to answer Madame Pose's question.
Yes, thank you very much for giving me the time to answer this important question. The NWMO has nothing to hide in terms of the work that we're doing. In fact, the whole point of doing engagement with Canadians is to be open and transparent, to share information and seek input to the process that we have underway. The Federal Minister of Natural Resources did invite us to begin looking at the strategy for implementing a pan-Canadian as well as all-encompassing waste strategy for Canada. And so in order to do that, the first step that we always take is to go back to Canadians to ask them what's important to them so that we make sure our strategy is effective. Policy is separate and distinct, and that is absolutely the responsibility for the government. Our work is to develop what we should do to make sure that all wastes are safely managed in a disposal pathway. That's the critical step that we're doing. And of course, as I said earlier, we have nothing to hide, and we would be happy to share the What We Heard reports that we have just published.
So my next question is around climate change. And, you know, in my province of BC, we've been experiencing the impacts of atmospheric rivers, extreme flooding, climate fires. These events are becoming more and more common across Canada with the climate crisis. And maybe both to Mr. Hendrickson and to Ms. Swamy, just how will these climate impacts affect the management of nuclear waste?
So perhaps I can start with that. And in fact, it's a very important concept as we consider implementing a project that is for such a long period of time. And part of our work is to consider the differences that will come through climate change over multiple decades and multiple generations. And we do that. So for instance, right now, when we consider deployment of a deep geologic repository, we consider that there is likely to be glaciation during the period of time when that facility would be in service, if you will. And so we look at that, we consider that, and we design to make sure that it can withstand glaciation. We consider increased weather, those types of things as well.
Thanks. Time's up, but it was an interesting question and interesting, good answer. So, Mr. Mazier, for five minutes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the witnesses coming out today. Mr. Gorman, can you think of any other industry that understands and manages its waste to the same standard as the nuclear industry?
No. And having been involved in several of the energy industries, as you know, nuclear really has a very positive story to tell and an important example, in my view, to be setting for other energy industries. We are, in addition to being the lowest life cycle carbon footprint of any energy technology, we are also, as you've heard, accountable for every bit of the waste that we produce, from the mining of the uranium right through to the decommissioning of a site, and we prepay for it, and we do all of those functions very responsibly. And I'd like to point out that spent fuel has never injured, let alone killed anybody here in Canada or around the world. And that's because it's a straightforward thing to do, and it's regulated internationally and in the various nations. It's regulated well, especially here in Canada, but it doesn't remove the need that we have here to find a permanent solution, storage solution, and which is what we're talking about today. So if other technologies, not only the ones that are emitting pollution in the air, which nuclear doesn't, but those technologies like wind and solar could follow the example of the nuclear industry in terms of prepaying and being regulated to manage its waste. I think it would be a very positive thing for the environment and for the world.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Mr. Van Wert, do you believe that the current classification of low-level waste is appropriate right now, and how could reclassification actually reduce nuclear waste?
Thank you for the question. We are satisfied with the current classifications of nuclear waste, and we believe working with our nuclear regulator, we can move forward with things like free release. So as we work through our low-level minimization programs, our low-level waste minimization and sorting programs, we find things like metals and steels and items that are able to be decontaminated, cleaned, and then free released and put back into society to be used. We all know there is a number of resource crunches. So that is what we would like to continue to look at, is using the existing regulatory framework to increase our ability to recycle things like metals found in our waste streams.
McMaster University and the work you're doing down there, you maybe expand on that a bit?
Sure. We have opened a clean energy sorting and recycling center with the support of McMaster University. So it's something we're very proud about at OPG. During the pandemic, we were able to open the facility, which is fully licensed and audited by the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission. We bring our low-level waste to the facility where we sort and recycle. Some of the very interesting preliminary findings we've had is that approximately 60% of the low-level waste that we store up at the Bruce site is actually meeting free release targets, which means that we can eventually release it out from underneath the management of the low-level waste category. We've also identified that the radioactivity that was originally measured and assigned with the waste has reduced significantly with time and the natural decay of the radioisotopes, so that on average, it's approximately 10% of the radioactivity that was originally there when we stored the waste. So over the period of 30, 40 years, the waste has significantly decayed in terms of radioactivity. So it's preliminary findings that McMaster will finalize for us later this year, but it's quite interesting and applicable to our business.
Yeah. I guess, Mr. Gorman, how important is certainty from government to ensuring that there's a strong nuclear industry into the future?
30 seconds.
Thank you for the question. Yeah, certainty is extraordinarily important, not only to the nuclear industry, but to all of the other clean energy technologies we're going to need, solar, wind, water, etc. It's terrific that we've got some very aggressive targets in place, but right now what the electricity industry needs is a plan, a pathway, a signal from each of the systems operators that we are going to have to double the amount of electricity we have, so that we can start going through the regulatory approvals and planning processes and getting the go-ahead to build out this infrastructure. And we're going to need all of the technologies. That being said, having a permanent solution for the nuclear waste and spent fuel, especially because we have to deal with the existing waste, but we're going to have more nuclear, is completely essential.
Okay, good, thanks. Mr. Henriksen, you have your hand up. Is it?
If I might.
Well, actually, if it's to provide a response, I'll have to leave it to other members to invite you to do so. So, which I'm sure some will oblige. Mr. Longfield.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to Madam Posey for this study and to the witnesses for a very good discussion we're having this morning. I wanted to start off with OPG with Mr. Van Wert. Recently, I met with the Canadian Medical Isotope Innovation Ecosystem that, as you've mentioned, McMaster's involvement, it also involves the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, Triumph, and Bruce Power that were all on the call with me. I had planned to go to site, and I also planned to go to the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation to meet with the chief last week, but COVID got in the way. They're looking at how to expand the medical isotope production in Canada and looking at ways to work with the Government of Canada. When we're looking at the Government of Canada, we've got the NRCan and we've got ECCC, and ECCC is involved with the Impact Assessment Agency of Canada, and of course NRCan is responsible for the radioactive waste policy. So how would you work with ECCC, which is the department that is most closely tied with this committee?
Mr. Longfield, I'm not familiar with ECCC. I can
I'm
talk
sorry,
about
Environment and Climate Change Canada. We're the government. We have acronyms for everything.
Well, I think we're very proud of our medical isotope program at OPG. And so we are very open to working with any government agencies. The Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission has reviewed our application to produce molybdenum at Arlington. They've approved that amendment, which will allow us to fill the shortage of technetium-99 generators, which is used in 50 million bone and lung heart scans each year in North America. We are actively working with the Nuclear Innovation Institute at Bruce Power and our friends in the Isotope Coalition led by Bruce Power that you recently met with. So we are open to working with any of the government committees. We are very serious about our development of molybdenum. We've recently harnessed the ability to extract helium-3 from the Darlington detritiation facility.
Right, thank you. And there were a few isotopes that they were discussing that were new to me as well. And I had worked in a previous life with cobalt-60 through Nordion and looking at the medical application, which was of great interest to me. I know Canada has lost a little bit of a position globally, but hopefully we can regain our position in medical isotope production.
Bruce Power and OPG have done a wonderful job. Lutetium is about to be produced at Bruce Power, which is fantastic for cancer treatment.
Yeah, great. Thank you very much for putting that on the record. And over to Ms. Swamy. The end of 2016, Canada had an inventory of about 33,000 metric tons of intermediate level radioactive waste. I hope I've got the units right. In 2019, that inventory had gone down to 15,000 units of waste. So the inventory drop of what we had on file. The low-level radioactive waste made up 98.9% of this total. What caused the drop? We've heard a few hints of that today, that some of the waste is getting repurposed. Could you comment on the decrease in our inventory?
So I can't speak specifically to those numbers off the top of my head, but what I would say is that radioactive waste, by its very nature, over time decays. And as it decays, it becomes less radioactive, if you will. And so during that process, so some of these wastes that we have in our inventory today have been with us for many, many years. And so when you go back to reassess what the waste is and what its characteristics are, you may find that it's not, well, you will find that it's not as radioactive as it once was. And
okay,
so
but a 3-year period was shocking to me.
Well, it depends on when you go about doing that study. So the waste may be sitting in storage for over 20, 25 years or more. And so if you don't look at it every day to see what the radioactive content is, when you go back to do that study, you would find that it has reduced in its radioactive content. And so that could lead to a change in the inventories that are available. And I think that's what's really important, is that it's not that the radioactive waste stays stable in its the way it is today. Right. It will decay over time and will be less as you go forward.
Unfortunately, we're out of time. Maybe a quick comment, Mr. Longfield, like 10-second comment.
I'm just commenting on the new technologies that might contribute to that. But yes, I am over time. Thank you, Mr.
Okay,
Chair.
thank you. Okay, we'll go to Mr. Davidson for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks to all the witnesses today. You know, I get really excited when I'm sitting here and we're talking about Canada again as a world leader. And I guess my question, Mr. Van Wart, We live about an hour. York Simcoe's about an hour. How you doing, Jason? York Simcoe's about an hour north of Pickering is where we are. I like to call it the soup and salad bowl of Canada, home to Lake Simcoe. And, you know, a lot of Canadians, I think they want to hear more about the benefits of nuclear energy and how it's relevant to their lives. I would just wonder if you could speak a little bit more to that. You know, we've heard helium, cobalt-43 and helium-3 and reactors. Some of the words are scary. I'm just saying, you know, how it helps Canadians in their lives. If you could speak more about that.
Sure. Thanks for the question. I think the most primary thing that nuclear power brings is the electricity we're using today. As I said in my opening comments, it provides half of the electricity in the province. It's stable, it's reliable, it's cost effective. And so at times, I think in the discussion about nuclear, we forget about that absolutely core piece that we all need in our lives, which is electricity. So I would start there. But as you said, it promotes a number of jobs. Mr. Gorman could probably provide the exact number in the province. But also, as we talked a little bit in my opening remarks, there is an entire byproduct stream that is providing cobalt-60, which sterilizes medical equipment, food. When you think about the pandemic over the last 2 years, the cobalt-60 consumption skyrocketed to produce PPE required for fighting the pandemic. Molybdenum-99, which we're going to produce at Darlington, that will immediately create a North American supply of Tech-99 generators to allow people with lung cancer, with heart disease, to have the diagnostic treatments that they need to understand their symptoms and have them then subsequently addressed. Mr. Longfield mentioned lutetium, which is a cancer treatment. And we are working with our partners at OPG to also produce helium-3. Helium-3, for anyone who's interested in quantum computing, you know, the next generation of really advanced computation, it requires helium-3. It's not naturally occurring on Earth. It's a byproduct of our tritium that we store safely at the Darlington Tritium Removal Facility. And we have innovated and invested in ways to produce a reliable source of helium-3 for Canada and for North America for development of these technologies. It's used in 5G electronics. You know, we're also looking at products to help remediate the back end of our decommissioning projects. So for our Pickering decommissioning, which will occur in the back half of the decade, one of the major things we need to look at is the heavy water that's left over at our facility. We are working with a number of partners on remediation of that heavy water. Virgin grade heavy water is a strategic asset. It's not readily available anywhere. And the Chalk River Labs have a certain amount in inventory, but that is a declining inventory. So we're looking at investing in remediation of that water to bring a strategic asset like virgin grade heavy water to Canada for the development of technologies, diagnostics.
Thanks.
So
Thanks.
Those are the things I would add.
No, thanks very much. And very interesting. One thing I didn't tell you, Jason, you know, York Simcoe is also home to the Chippewas of Georgina Island. It's my family. And you know, the proposed repository in Kincardine is within the traditional territories of the Chippewas, Seguin First Nation, the Chippewas, Neegwash unceded First Nations, Niwash, pardon me. Can you tell the committee more about, you know, your commitment, your company's commitment to your dialogue, relationships with local First Nations in regards to this project?
Sure. In regards to, so to start with, we respect the rights of all Indigenous peoples. Our Reconciliation Action Plan that we released this past year commits over $1 million to try over the next 10 years in economic benefits to try to work with Indigenous nations. But locally here, we meet routinely with the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation. We routinely discuss their concerns and their issues related to the waste that's stored at the facilities up here. And if you were specifically speaking to the DGR project, the low-level waste repository project that OPG had intended to start here, that project was conceived of in 2005, I believe, approximately. In 2013, OPG made a commitment to the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation that we wouldn't move forward with that project without their consent. And so we went through a process with them over nearly a decade.
Okay, we're unfortunately out of time. We're out of time, though I'm interested in that project, actually, because I've been approached by...
Thanks very much.
Yeah, okay. Ms. Taylor-Roy.
Oh, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And I'd just like to start by saying I'm going to be sharing my time with Elizabeth May. So I'd like to give her 2 minutes at the end if you can let me know when my time is out.
Sure.
And I'd like to thank you, Madame Posey, for suggesting this study on the disposal of nuclear waste. We seem to have strayed quite far from the topic you suggested. And it's good to know of all these great byproducts and the isotopes and all of the other things that are benefiting us. And I think that's wonderful. And I, like Mr. Duguid, I'm not opposed to any type of power that could help us reach our goals. However, I do have some real concerns about the disposal of nuclear waste and where we are not only in Canada, but worldwide, as there is still no operational long-term disposal project for the high-level radioactive waste. Now, that's really what we're talking about, I think. And I appreciate that Mr. Maziere asked about the requirements of the nuclear industry when you're talking about waste and how much more rigorous they are. But I do believe that we all would acknowledge how much more dangerous this waste is as well. So I'm just wondering, when we're looking right now at the adaptive phased management program that's in place, the costs were estimated to be $23 billion in 2015 dollars. And we still haven't found a site for that. In fact, there's a lot of opposition, and we were just talking about relations with First Nations, and we saw that in the Kincardine site it was rejected by the Ojibwe Nation. So what is the realistic expectation of finding one of these sites for our waste? And if we're not able to do that, what is the alternative?
So I presume that question is for me.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Swami.
So a few things in your comments. First of all, there are operating and have been in service for some time facilities for low and intermediate level waste worldwide. Yes. They vary certainly in terms of the depth that they may be and that type of thing. But essentially, it is the same concept and the same process that we will be using for used fuel as you would use for low and intermediate level waste, particularly intermediate level waste. And so those do exist. So we have proof of concept. There is in Finland that their facility is under construction. And as I mentioned in my opening remarks, they have applied for an operating license and they anticipate placing their spent fuel in their repository in the next 2 to 3 years. Sweden has just approved a site. And I would say, like all of the tier 1 nuclear nations, Canada is on the cusp of doing the same. We are working very closely with the communities in 2 particular areas. First, in the northwestern part of Ontario, Ignace municipality, but we're also working very closely with Wabigoon Lake Ojibwe Nation. And in the south, we have South Bruce and the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation that was just talked about. And in both of those cases with Indigenous communities, we have made a commitment that we will not proceed without their free, prior, and informed consent. And this is fundamental to our work. From the question around whether I think we will be successful, I believe we will be successful. We have been working with these communities for many, many years, and they are beginning to.
Could I just interject for a minute because my time is short, and I appreciate what you're saying. Could you also address the cost part of that? Because we were told that these costs are pre-funded. And the cost estimates, as you know, have a way of increasing, and those estimates were in 2015 dollars. Has that all been pre-funded? And how? Is that money sitting someplace right now?
Yes. So yes, the money is pre-funded.
45 seconds, please. Yeah.
For the existing fuel bundles, it's sitting in trust funds that are held for the NWMO to access when we have our construction license, and those funds continue. We look at these funds every 5 years to re-estimate what the cost could be. Of course, we look for cost savings because we recognize there could be cost push, So we always are looking for efficiencies and better ways of doing it. And we found one in Canada, unique to Canada in terms of our used fuel packaging, which is a very important part of the work we do, which is our engineering team does a great job around these things.
Ms. Taylor-Roy, I'm afraid we've actually bumped up against your 5 minutes. So I'm going to make an executive decision. Hopefully it won't meet with protests. But I have a question myself at the end. We do have a very small buffer at the end, so I have a very short question, and I would also like to provide Ms. May with an opportunity to ask a question at the end. I think it's in order. So we'll go to Madame Posey now, please.
Thank you. Madam Swamy, I have 2 questions. Could you please answer by yes or no? If you want to elaborate, please send us the relevant documents. First, could you pledge to integrate radioactive waste produced by future SMRs in the waste management strategy? Yes or no?
I'm not sure I understood the question. Required on the APM to take in all small modular reactor waste, and it is part of our study for the integrated radioactive waste strategy.
Okay, excellent.
Thank you. Now, your organization said in December that it managed only a waste produced in Canada. We know that we import some of it. So if a law prohibiting the import of waste, would it not be relevant? Yes or no?
Again, we don't import waste from other jurisdictions. The waste that we are responsible for is Canadian
Non, pas
waste.
vous, Madame Swamy.
Not you, ma'am, but other organizations do. So would you agree that a bill prohibiting this would be a good idea? Yes or no?
I cannot comment on a bill.
Okay, merci. Ma question irait vers Monsieur Hendrickson.
Now, a question for Mr. Hendrickson. I've spoken about it with you earlier. We know that we recategorized the intensity of waste. Mr. Longfield said that there are fewer waste. It's because medium-level waste became low-level waste. Do you see a link between the rapid rhythm with which we are bringing radioactive waste to Chalk River and this new regulation that, according to many, goes against physical sciences principles?
Thank you. Very challenging to actually measure many of the radionuclides in radioactive waste. It's difficult. It's easy to measure something like cobalt-60, which is a powerful gamma emitter. But for many of the beta and even alpha emitters, it takes pretty specialized equipment. So when waste is mixed, potentially low and intermediate level, it's difficult to know whether it should be classified as low or intermediate. Our concern is a lot of intermediate level waste that's mixed is now being categorized as low level at Chalk River so that it can go into an above ground mound.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. We'll go to... on est vraiment rendu à 3 minutes.
We're at 3 minutes. I have 2 minutes 42 here, but okay. Well, it goes over 2.5 minutes. I'm sorry. I'm really sorry, but we have to move on. Ms. Collins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just maybe a quick kind of yes or no question for Ms. Swamy, Mr. Van Wart, and Mr. Gorman. And I got the answer already from Mr. Henderson just around mitigating the risk of potential conflict of interest around who's regulating and where the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission reports to. Just wondering if each of you would welcome a change to who the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission reports to, changing it from the Minister of Natural Resources to the Minister of Environment.
So thank you for that question. For clarity, the CNSC actually reports to Parliament and does not report to the Minister of Natural Resources, so I don't see a need for a change.
I would just echo Ms. Swami's comment.
Canada's current regulatory regime aligns with international best practices from our perspective, so I agree with Mr. Gorman and Ms. Swami.
Okay, and then I wanted to, I know Mr. Henderson said or had his hand up earlier and was wanting to respond. So I just wanted to open up space, Mr. Henderson, for you to make your comments.
Oh, yeah, thanks. You had asked about climate change impacts, which I think is very important. And that's why siting of nuclear waste facilities is so important. There's a lot of high-level waste right on the shores of Lake Ontario. We don't know what the lake levels will do in future. It's fairly imperative to move that away. At Chalk River, the proposed mound, we don't know what extreme rainfall and snowfall amounts might do in terms of washing the waste off that mound and leaching waste out. So that's why the IAEA says that siting is an extremely critical part of radioactive waste management.
Thank you so much, Mr. Henderson. And just going back, I just quickly look back on my notes. Mr. Swami, Mr. Gorman, and Mr. Van Wart, the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission reports to Parliament through the Minister of Natural Resources, who is also responsible for overseeing the production of nuclear energy. So there is a potential for at least the appearance of a conflict of interest, given that the International Atomic Energy Agency says that in order to be credible, in order to have public trust, their regulators need to mitigate those potential risks.
We'll take that as a comment, an insightful comment, but we'll have to now move to Mr. Albus.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and again, thank you to all the witnesses that are being here. I'd like to start with Mr. Van Wart. In regards to SMR development, obviously the Darlington site is going to be Canada's first shot at trying out this. Could you please explain, it's my understanding that Hitachi's, that particular project is a third generation modular reactor versus a fourth generation, and what would if you could just explain what is the difference in the technology, and also what is their results for waste. And I understand if you can't say because fourth generation is still being tested, but if you could just give us an idea, is there going to be more waste? What kind of waste? Will it fit well into the current regime we have here in Canada? Let's start with that.
I think the way I would like to address that question, because I'm certainly not an expert in the SMR technology. We have a team here at OPG, a large team that's working with that project. So if I could, I'd provide a written response to your question, as opposed to me trying to give you my less than.
Nope, that's fine. I would appreciate a written response. Because I do think the public needs to know that there is a difference between what we've traditionally used in Canada and some of the new approaches that would be used for some of the things Mr. Dreeshen has called in support of. I'll go back to Mr. Gorman. Mr. Gorman, I asked earlier about this level of support, and you said the government has given some. Now, that's despite the lack of endorsement for anything nuclear by Minister Guilbeault. Could you tell us what is the gap right now? How can members of Parliament best encourage this government? And what is it? Is it in money? Is it encouragement? Is it championing the work that has been done and the work that the nuclear sector will do with this technology? Could you give us an idea of money, and can you give us an idea of best ways to support?
Thank you very much, Mr. Ellis. I think all of those things are needed. I'll start with clear support from all government policy makers, a clear and ongoing, repeated acknowledgement that nuclear is not only clean but needed for a net zero future. That's extremely important for all sorts of different reasons. In terms of financial support, I think there's a couple of important things to recognize here. One is that the industry, including 4 utilities and 4 provinces have come together with an integrated pan-Canadian plan for the development and deployment of small modular reactors. It was developed with Natural Resources Canada over a number of years through wide consultation and followed up with an action plan from the Liberal government. The utilities are not only forging ahead, but bringing matching financing, and so that financing request should be met. I think, as I remarked earlier, the tax credits and accelerated capital cost allowances that are being extended to other clean energy sources like wind and solar must be extended to the nuclear industry, and that includes the contemplated investment tax credit. So all of those things, leadership in terms of recognizing that nuclear is clean and matching financing for the first of a kind rollout of these small modular reactors is essential.
Send to the committee what that would look like. And quite honestly, right at this point, I would love Minister Guilbeault. A tweet, Minister, doesn't cost very much. And chances are that tweet has been provided by no carbon energy here in Ontario. So that would be a good start. But I also would like to have that recognition in the House of Commons. So how can we best advance this? Is this through writing letters to Minister Guilbeault and Minister Wilkinson?
Well, in terms of the request that's been put into the budget process, we've submitted the letter into Finance Canada, and I'd be happy to provide a copy to this panel. And it talks about the need for a level playing field here with respect to existing tax credits and future investment tax credits.
I have about 30 seconds left, and so I just wanted to thank all of our panelists for being here today, and to just thank you for your expertise on this very important subject. And again, my thanks to Madame Posey for suggesting that we have this conversation about nuclear waste and our regime here in Canada.
Thank you, Mr. Albus. Ms. Thompson. Ms. Thompson, you're on mute.
Sorry, so sorry. I thought I had taken that off. Ms. Swamy, if I could go back to something that you had said in the very beginning, I believe it was with your opening remarks, and it is around the volunteer site selection. Would you, if you wouldn't mind, go into a little bit more detail around what that looks like?
Thanks very much. I think this is a really important part of the work that we did many years ago now. So we established a process for reaching out to communities to understand who might be interested in learning more about the potential to host a used fuel repository in their community. And at the time, it was 2010, and at the time we had 22 communities come forward from Saskatchewan as well as from Ontario. And over the last number of years, we have been looking at the community, understanding their interest in this project. We've also looked at the geosphere or the rock that would be available in the communities to really understand interest. During that period of time, we've learned much about those communities, their interest in the project, as well as the Indigenous communities where the traditional territory or the unceded territory might be. And so we've worked with many, many people to understand interest, understand the safety around deploying in that particular area. And over time, we are now working only in 2 communities, which I referenced earlier. Very important part of our work is that we must have a willing and informed community and communities where we will deploy our project.
Thank you. And it's sort of a little link to that. So if you wouldn't mind speaking around the security aspects when you're actually transporting the waste to perhaps one of those 2 selected sites, but any potential security concerns and how you envision being able to deal with that.
Certainly. So the transportation of the used fuel must move from the existing facilities where the used fuel is stored today, so the operating facilities, New Brunswick, Quebec, and Ontario. And we have been working on a transportation program and framework where we're going out to Canadians to understand what's of interest to them with respect to that transportation project or program. And of course, security and safety is quite important to Canadians to understand what that would look like. And so we will be implementing programs with knowing where our trucks are at all times, understanding the areas that they're driving through, and we will probably have escort cars and things like that for protection of the used fuel, and do this in a very safe manner. I will add that today used fuel is moved in Canada, not as frequently as maybe in the future, but right now it is moved, and we have never had an incident or accident with used nuclear fuel transportation in Canada.
Thank you. And sort of, a link to that and around transparency. And I realize that this has to also be, viewed through the realities of security. But do you envision a site where public can, where the general public will be able to access information in terms of processes? And I look at this with through the lens of public safety and not only the perception but the depth of information that really strengthens faith that indeed systems are secure and reasonable protections and supports are in place.
So I think there's a number of things where
you have 45 seconds about now.
We will be open and transparent about our work. We will have what we'll call a center of expertise where members of the public can come, observe our work, observe the processes that we have in place. And of course, we have very robust regulation around transportation in particular, but also around our facility, both through the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission as well as Transport Canada. So there are many regulators involved with nuclear facilities, and one of them is the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission, the primary, but there are many others, including ECCC will be involved.
Thank you. There's about 10 seconds, Ms. Thompson, so brief statement if you have one, but a very brief comment, but no, I don't think we have time for a question.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Okay.
Just to say thank you. The transparency, I think, is incredibly important.
Thank you. Ms. May.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks to Leah for trying. Look, directly to Ole Hendrickson, because I know I don't have much time. I want to drill down on some of the conflict of interest that is inherent in the way nuclear waste is managed in Canada, and ask on another aspect of it is the Nuclear Waste Management Organization was created in 2002, I think it was, by an act of Parliament, only allows nuclear reactor owners to sit on the organization. Does that create a conflict of interest in your mind, Mr. Hendrickson?
Yes, unfortunately, this Seaborn panel and our organization participate in it, recommended an independent body to manage nuclear waste, and that did not transpire with the Nuclear Fuel Waste Act. What we have is a organization that is owned and operated by only the nuclear waste generators.
And then the next one is that the first of these so-called small modular reactors, which, as you say, exist on paper, is going ahead at Point Lepreau with $50 million. I don't know, another witness said there was no subsidies, but the federal government, between ACOA and another innovation fund, has put $50 million into it. The company that's building it's never built one, but it requires going into the fuel repository of waste at Point Lepreau. Could you comment on that?
Yes, Mr. Van Wart mentioned that there's interest in extracting plutonium, and that's what the Moltex proposal is. That creates huge concerns about nuclear weapons proliferation when plutonium is put into commerce. Several eminent scientists have written the federal government to say we should not engage in that type of activity.
Can I jump in and ask one quick thing? We know AECL used to be purely government Crown Corporation, and SNC-Lavalin bought it for a song. SNC-Lavalin has some unsavory partners that are involved in the nuclear weapons business. I wonder if you could comment on that.
The three members of the coalition that's operating all federal nuclear sites are Fluor, Jacobs, and SNC-Lavalin, and Fluor and Jacobs both have had to pay large sums of money for legal problems in the United States.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, Ms. May. Mr. Hendrickson, I have a very quick question for Ms. Swamy. The Kincardine site, that's the one near Lake Huron, is it not?
So maybe I can answer it. There was a DGR that was proposed by OPG near Kincardine on their existing facility. Our project is looking at a deep geologic repository for used fuel in South Bruce.
Okay.
South Bruce is inland.
What happened with the the first site, the one by Bruce Power? I know there was some back and forth with the Minister of the Environment at the time, and did you report on it? Was it rejected? I'm just a little fuzzy on the history.
I can speak to that, but Jason is maybe in
Okay.
a better
Yeah,
position.
sure. Go ahead, Mr. Van Voort.
Sure. Thanks, Lori. So the project was canceled after the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation
Got it.
did not vote to support it.
Okay. Thank you so much. That's all I really wanted to know. This has been a fascinating discussion, and I think we've gathered a lot of fodder for our report. And so thank you, Madame Posé. And this really brings us to the conclusion. We will have Mr. Edwards back for sure, and we'll be working with him on the technology. Madame Posé, vous avez un point à soulever?
I have a point to raise. Yes, Mr. Chair. First of all, I would like to know at what time we will know the people who we will have for the next meeting, because I know that some people are waiting for their invitation. That's the first thing. Secondly, I would like to know if we will go with 1 hour with some witnesses and another hour with other witnesses. No. First of all, I'm planning for a meeting of the executive committee, and we'll then talk about the witnesses. But we talked about too many witnesses to have 5 today, and we've received a list of proposed witnesses, and we're working on this. But we'll have a meeting of the executive committee. And your second question again? He had raised a two-part question, I think. No, for the panels, we will follow the example of the model that we used for the study on plastics. The panel will be there for 2 hours, and we'll have several rounds of questions. I can't hear you, Mrs. Posé. Is it something that will be discussed at the executive committee? Yes, of course, we can discuss all of that. Monsieur Longfield.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. It might be helpful for the clerk to give us a work plan.
That's what that's what we're going to do. We're going to do that. We're ahead of you. Okay.
Well, that might help.
Yeah, no, we're going to do that. We're going to have a meeting of the steering committee, and we're going to talk about all that stuff. So thank you.
That's why we have you there. Thank you.
Thank you to the witnesses and to the members for your excellent questions. And pardon me? Yes, you are moving adjournment, Mr. Yeah. Okay, meeting. Everyone agrees? Okay, meeting adjourned.
Thank you.